Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm covering why Christian dating sucks, the shaming of young men. This is by an amazing channel called Divine, I want to say is how it's pronounced. Excellent videos like this. I would go check out the channel, but we're going to do a quick snippet. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's a really good section here. And let's just dive into it because my channel is primarily aimed at Christian guys navigating the world and how to achieve their best life outcomes. So that's the focus of this channel. So let's kind of dive into this video here.
Take for granted is slowly being rigged against the average Westerner. Many people over the age of 35 simply do not understand this, and they can't because they are not in the shoes of younger people. Or at least they have a purely ideological, not real understanding and perception of the cultural and economic reality young Christians are forced to live in. For this video, we'll focus on so-called Christian dating and relationships, specifically on why it no longer works in the classical sense and why previous generations are unable to properly comprehend this.
So that's why, especially I would say men over 50 and to a degree, men over 35, like he said before, don't understand the direness of the situation. Or they just want to throw blame on younger people and how they need to buck up and be a man. And it's like, what do you think? What kind of people created this environment for which the failure is happening? We know that it's becoming tougher and tougher for people to meet, for families to be formed, for kids to be birthed, as we've covered in the birth rates. And so especially anyone who's boomer age, obviously rest in peace, John MacArthur, who was showing the video here. Anyone in the boomer, 70, 80-year-old range, is going to have no concept of what it's like for 20, 25-year-olds in this dating world. It's not like it was back in the 60s where you can find your high school sweetheart and that's that. It's much more complicated, much more difficult. That's why I direct my channel towards young men finding successful life outcomes in this really difficult environment.
This will likely be one video in a longer series discussing the problems of modernity in relationship to Christianity. So let's take a look at a few clips which have been circulating online from Gen X, Millennial, Boomer, Protestant, Western Christian pastors on why men are supposedly the problem when it comes to relationships.
A guy who's in his late 20s, early to mid 30s, still doesn't have a woman, still doesn't have children on the horizon, is a very selfish and self-indulgent human being. And he is just going to vote for socialists to take care of him from womb to tomb, rather than being a grown man who carries his own responsibilities for his family.
You might be eager to obey the command, but can't find anybody who's willing to marry you. So you have to look at yourself in the way that Paul described marriage in Ephesians 5. He basically says that a husband is like a savior to his wife. And I think the burden really lies with men to see them.
Right. So it's always going to be projecting the blame onto men, not looking at the issues, because it's too difficult for these people to examine what's going on, maybe change their worldview, maybe change their understanding of how things are. It's much easier to just get up there and yell at men because you're going to get claps from the older men. You're going to get claps from all the women, right? And so once again, it's all the young men who are left out, and they're the ones who get bludgeoned by this advice. It's so popular. It's easy for them to do. So they never think about looking at it deeper. It was easier when they do it, and they just assume it's the same, when really the reality of the dating market is completely different and much more difficult for the average guy, especially Christian guys looking for virtuous women.
Themselves as those who rescue women from loneliness.
They are not moving forward. They're not getting jobs. They're not.
Yeah, they're the reason for not getting jobs, not the ridiculous, made up, fake fiat economy that currently exists, or the fact that there's a lot of issues with immigration and taking jobs there. None of that has to play the blame. It's just guys don't want to go out there and do the work or get the job. The statistics don't back up this loser 30-year-old guy who plays video games in his mom's basement. That is the perception that is pushed. But if you look at the data, this person doesn't really exist in any more sort of degree than was previously existed.
Starting careers. They're not leaving their parents' home. They're not launching into.
Maybe it's because housing prices are 10 to 15x the median income. Maybe that's why they're not leaving the home and getting their game
independently. You just decide, you know what? My goal is to mature, to take on responsibility, figure out my degree or my trade or my job, find my wife, buy my house, start my responsibility. How many of you older guys agree with?
How out of touch are you to suggest just go and buy a house? Okay, well, they're $700,000, $600,000, $500,000. it's so out of reach and achievable even for people his age, millennials and young Gen Xers. So that's totally outdated, ridiculous advice to suggest that. Now, there's a time and place for suggesting, hey, you need to buck up, you need to get these things. If you have nothing going on in your life, you just sit at home, play video games, and just complain about the world, I think that is a terrible way to go about things. My channel is about taking action, taking responsibility, and finding your path and your alignment in your life. So if that is someone like you, then yeah, you do need to kind of buck up and man up and take on what society has and figure out a path for yourself. But that's not where a lot of men are at. A lot of men are trying. They're trying to get the job, be in college, get the trade. Statistically, that's what we see, but they're not succeeding because the system is stacked against them.
With me on this point. It's an amazing opportunity.
These clips highlight the level of disconnect between Gen Z and previous generations. This Protestant pastor in this clip, after years of seemingly ignoring the obvious problem, has finally realized that Westerners are not getting married and not having kids. His solution, as strange as it is to shame men. The few men who are still showing up to Protestant churches, as it turns out, are already shamed by the world. Since modernity is positioned against young Western men, it's beyond insulting then that upon showing up to a church, they are berated for not being married, which is usually beyond their control. Essentially, the message from most pastors, just like the message from influencers like Jordan Peterson, is that men are the problem. And the reasons why men lack families and economic stability, amongst other things, is because they simply haven't stepped up. This is pure idiocy.
Yeah.
Most young men are looking for marriage and family, and they are willing to bear responsibilities that come along with that.
But a lot of men are deciding now they're not willing to settle for something that does not align with their life and what they believe biblically. That is the problem. And that's what the feminist controlled church structure does not like, is they want the men to conform to what they think the marriage should look like, where the women are in charge. The women are in charge of the church structure. It's all feminized. Women don't have any duties or responsibilities to bring to marriage. It's all on the men. They want you to conform to that structure. And as it's degraded over time, I would say Gen X is the last generation where it was like kind of worth it for men. And then we see millennial and now Gen Z, men are going, you know what? Like, it's become so not worth it for me that they've either stopped trying, or they're looking for a diamond in the rough. They're looking for something that is so statistically small, have a chance of happening in the West or America, that they're having a really, really difficult time. So that's why advocating for expanding your horizons to date and look globally now to find that option, as opposed to, I've done a video on the channel, the statistics of you finding the traditional like trad wife who is a Christian and has a low body count, is so infinitesimally small in the West, who's, fit and petite, right? It's such a small percentage of women, like the odds of that happening are so small.
Men are or have pursued young Christian women, and most of the time they've either been rejected or ended up in validation relationships in which women use men for attention and emotional support. Neither of these are sufficient, yet this is the reality for most young Christian men in the West, if you actually talk to them. The situation is this: the Western system is fundamentally broken as a result of decades of ideological rot. All major social institutions have been infiltrated in some form. Universities, schools, churches, media, entertainment, and so on. In the context of this video, relationships, feminism has been injected into all of these institutions in one form or another, and this leads to a corrupted legal system which favors divorce, and a social narrative which de-emphasizes the role of traditional marriage and particularly having children. The church has not been immune to this. Most rhetoric in the modern Western mainstream church, particularly Protestant churches, is in favor of progressive feminist ideas, which would have been seen as radical just 50 or 60 years ago, but because they occurred more than a generation ago, they're just taken for granted and they're not questioned at all. For example, many older Christians believe that dating is the act of a man pursuing a woman until she inevitably accepts the request, upon which time you date, get married, and start a family. Many older Christians also believe that a man and his wife both have equal authority in the household and the church, an idea which became popular in the 70s.
Right, these are all outdated, or these are all, no, not outdated, but these are all modern concepts that have just come into existence the last 50 or 60 years, and weirdly, as they were introduced, we see the decline in the rot of society socially at the same time, reduction of the birth rate, people's happiness, the amount of people on drugs, all kind of come at the same time as these concepts are introduced. So I wonder if there's a correlation between them.
How many female church leaders do you see? How many overly emotional church sermons?
I mean, just factually, the idea of female pastors and female church leaders 100 years ago was completely unheard of in basically all forms of Christianity. So did we just figure it out recently how to correctly do things, or is there something else at play here that is injecting modernity into the situation?
Or worship services do you see? This is not normal, nor is it trad or based or anything like that. It's ridiculous. Young women, Christian or not, are not encouraged to get married by most churches. They are fed a watered-down version of the same feminist rhetoric you would find in a secular university. They softly speak about the same female liberation ideas, like starting a career, focusing on discovering yourself, and focusing on oneself before finding a husband. By the time all is said and done, most women are in their late 20s or early 30s before they even consider getting married seriously. And once they do get married, they marry men who they do not respect nor honor. This highlights another issue. Women in the church are not taught right identity, biblically speaking. Many women live in insecurity perpetually and desire continual validation from men to cope with this. Men who do not understand their role as a guy will give women they find attractive this validation. Eventually, some of them will get married, but the problem is women do not have respect for men who continually validate them and focus solely on them. The problem should be obvious, and these marriages end in divorce, which is not biblical, or in situations where the wife controls her husband, which is also not biblical. It never ends. Chances are, and perhaps...
And wives are going to continue to control husbands in these settings until, one, the church actually grows a spine and enforces biblical marriage, biblical principles in marriage, or two, the laws change surrounding divorce. And these are going to take a long time for these to change. And so that's why I encourage men to think about your other options and think about a way that you can set up a real biblical marriage instead of working within this rotted Western framework that honestly is kind of lost at this point.
Perhaps this is a bold claim, but many of the pastors in these clips are probably in this position themselves, either in unhappy marriages or in marriages where the husband must appease his wife by either allowing her to control him or at least by refraining from talking about particular issues like women leaders in the church or other touchy social issues or regime talking points. These Christian women understand that they can withhold certain things from their husbands which will compel them to change. This is not biblical. When was the last time a church leader got on stage and talked about how the legal system or schooling system and media and entertainment apparatus are all rigged against young men?
They'll never talk about that because that's not who they're serving, right? That's not who, those are the people they're trying to tell to buck up, right? So they will, and then they're captured by these feminist motives within the church. So they'll never talk about those things.
How young Western men are the object of unparalleled scorn by all corners of society. Older Christian pastors don't talk about this stuff because they're either out of touch or they are fundamentally weak. They're scared of actually addressing real-world problems out of the fear of offense. Complaining about men not stepping up is a convenient topic for them to focus on because it isn't true. And because it isn't true, their job is...
Right, just what I said before. It's easy. It's acceptable. Everyone will clap like seals when you do it. So that's why they do it like that. And they never think to look beyond that.
Not on the line if they talk about it. There's no shortage of jobs for people that carry water for that. If anyone needs to step up, it is these church pastors, ironically, who allow the West to fall around them while they do nothing to save it. Despite the rhetoric of attacking young men for being the problem, the opposite is ironically true. Young men who take care of themselves, prioritize God, and are socially and politically aware are some of the only people who are not part of the problem. They call out real issues, and they are slandered by those in the church for doing so.
Exactly. In most churches, if you bring up issues like these, you're a woman hater, right? Oh, you hate women. You're terrible. How dare you point these things out? You're just bitter, right? They'll throw every name under the book at you when it's these men who really understand how this is working and the rot around them. So that's why I say, go somewhere where you're appreciated, guys. Go somewhere where you're appreciated. Go somewhere where the women want you, where they value your masculinity. and stop trying to operate within this broken system. You can be successful, but it's hard. And I tell men, try and be successful in the West in this system. Try to find your wife at church. Okay, give it a shot. But if it's not working, like for a lot of men, it's not. Expand your horizons. Okay, I got a ton of videos on my channel about that. Open up your possibilities. Go where you're appreciated, and you have a much better shot at leading that fulfilling, aligned life where it's a real patriarchal and biblically masculine marriage. So I'm going to stop the video there. There's a lot more to cover. Go to his channel and watch it because it's so good. So go check it out there. If you have any comments on this video and Christian dating, what's your experiences like, Christian guys dating? Has it been good? Has it been bad? I'd like to hear your thoughts in a comment down below. You know how to support the channel. Like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Thank you so much for watching. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.